thanks so much for coming out tonight. It's really been wonderful working with you, getting to know new people, firing a new kiln, doing all the things we enjoy doing. And I'm so grateful to sponsoring an artist in his mid-career. That's how I think of myself. So we'll start out here, talk about growing up. This is the house that I grew up in northern Pennsylvania, in a little town. And when I teach workshops, I often ask people three questions. First is, how many of you grew up in homes with handmade pots? Show of hands. 2, 3. Better than average. Okay. And how many of you know a poem by heart? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, similar. And the third question is, can you think of a day in your life when everything changed from there on? Yeah. And then a subset of that is, can you remember your first aesthetic experience? First aesthetic experience happens before we've ever heard the word aesthetic. It's about an experience in your life that kind of focuses you on how beautiful life can be. And my first aesthetic experience happened on the steps of that porch when I was 8 years old. We lived about a mile from or half mile from the Susquehanna River, and on the other side of the river, they were setting up a circus in the summer, and we had an old sea captain's telescope. And I was watching the circus set up, and a handler took an elephant down to the river and took him out into the river. And the elephant got a trunk full of water and it sprayed it up, and it was backlighted. And I just thought, what a world. It was just so amazing to see that thing. And of course, at the time, you don't realize how important it is, but I've always reflected on that moment. And so that's where it happened. This was a house that was an ongoing project for my family. It was falling apart when we got it. In fact, the people who lived in it before we did raised chickens in one of the upstairs bedrooms. And my dad always wanted to have a wood shop, and so we were cleaning out this former chicken room, and my mother was helping until we found a mummified chick, and she ran screaming down to the kitchen, and the rest was up to us. Now, we did make a really great shop. My dad was an engineer. He loved making things. And so we grew up in a home where making things was important. Okay. Now, next one, please. Yeah. I currently live right in the middle of Pennsylvania in a town called Huntingdon. And I moved there in 1967 to be the director of freshman composition at a little college. And I made a career switch. They let me start a ceramics department. And that's what I did for 30 some years. Yeah. This billboard was there when I moved in, and I thought it was remarkable. It helped me to orient myself in time and space. But it was attacked by religious zealots with chainsaws who were dismayed because there was no mention of the Devonian time zone in the Bible. And I'm so glad I took a picture of it before they got to it. Okay. Yep. This studio that I built on the left, house on the right. I built all these things by wholesaling pots. I didn't borrow any money. to build a house or studio. Took 3 years to move in. There was a small house on the property that I lived in while I was building these things. So this is where everything happens. Okay? Yep. Visitors often ask about the weather sculpted stone I keep beside my driveway at the base of a white oak tree. I first saw it 6 or 7 years ago at a farm auction in Big Valley. Just recently, I took a notion to go back and see if it was still there. When I drove down the lane, a young Amishman came out of the barn, and I asked if he'd seen any unusual stones. "Let's have a look," he said. In a little while, we found it in a clump of weeds. "Would you mind if I took it? I like unusual stones." "You're welcome to it," he said. "Just grab your end and I'll get this one." Up went the stone for its first ride in a Japanese pickup truck. I got in and started the engine. "I'm going to enjoy having this," I told him. "I hope you do. You ought to get around easier without that stone on your mind." That's just how it happened, okay? If you like poems and you like working with them, you always have to be wearing an invisible catcher's mitt. And when something like that comes along, you snag it and write it down. I negotiate between these two bookcases. One is ceramics and the other is poetry, okay? And I like to point this out because the skeleton shows all of the parts of the body that can be replaced with ceramics. The body has an affinity for clay, not in a metaphorical sense, but in a physical sense. There are people who owe their lives to ceramic imprints, patella, kneecap, zygomatic arch under the eye, pieces of fingers. All this work has been done by the Johns Hopkins University Orthopedic Center. And then on the other side, we have our part, the ceramic aspect of clay and the intersection of the imagination and the earth. Okay. I have an affinity for the early ceramics made in this country, 19th century salt glazed stoneware jugs and crocks. This is a pretty typical example of the pieces that were made in the northeastern part of the United States in the 1880s and 90s. People at that time in history were taught how to draw in what's called a Spencerian script. They knew how to do handwriting. And so the decoration was often done by women, very facile, with a brush and a slip cup. Okay? Yeah, so I love those early jugs. And I don't want to see the form go away. I want to be somebody who maintains an interest in those forms. So I love making little jugs and big jugs. Okay. Yep. This is my crew, one of the crews after we fired my kiln. That symbol in the background, the stones, has an interesting story. One time I was driving through Georgetown in Washington, D.C., and I pulled up to a red light and I saw that beautiful curved stone on a chain on a backhoe. And it was summer, and I called out to the backhoe operator's helper. I said, "Where are you going with that stone?" He said, "To the dump." And I reached in my wallet and I got out a $20 bill and I waved it to him. He took it and he showed it to the operator, and the operator, I was driving my pickup truck, He just went, mm. He just dropped it down in the truck and I drove away. I didn't know what to do with it, but I knew it was part of the original curb in Washington, D.C. And so the pots that are made in that kiln have that symbol on the bottom of them. Okay. And this is a recent photograph of our June firing. I have two anagamas. The large one was built in 1987. And this is a photograph from last June's firing with the kiln structure in the back and the pots. Usually about 16 to 18 people help out. I have a crew of 10 that helps all the time. Okay. Yep, this is my friend Dave Kyler, big helper. He and I do all the wood for the kiln. Okay. This is my shard pile. It's the current shard pile. I think this is the third one. The others are all covered up with dirt. But, you know, for every good pot we make, there are lots and lots of pots like this, and we can't ignore them. We can't pretend that they don't exist. And we have to make them all to make the small percentage of pieces that are really good. That's how it is. If you're a fisher, if you're fishing, how many casts do you make to catch one fish? You know, and you miss a lot of them. It's just that small percentage of good pieces that we acknowledge, but this is just as important. Okay. Yep. There's one whole jug that didn't make it down by the kiln. Okay. I'm here today because in 1978, I found this jug in a flea market. I had written a book about salt glazing. I was really passionate about salt glazing in the 1970s. And I went to Germany and I did a lot of research. I wrote a book that came out in 1977. And I read the book on salt glazing. I realized it was the best book I could do. And when I put it down, I realized I had lost my interest in salt glazing completely. I think I lost my interest because I had run out of questions to ask myself. As long as I had questions, I was involved in answering them. And so I saw this jug and I thought, that jug tells a story about what had happened to it. It fell over in the kiln and it had a little autobiography written on it. So I traced it down to a pottery in France. But in the meantime, I ran into an American potter named Rob Bernard, who was working in Japan. And he sent me a picture of this arch form of a small anagama that was being built in Japan from split bamboo and torn up bed sheets. And I just thought it was the most wonderful thing. It's the only kiln I'd ever seen that looked as though it was shaped like fire. And so I got Rob to come to our college, and we started to build the first anagama in Pennsylvania. Okay? And this is it. We wanted to dig down deeper, but we hit bedrock. And we couldn't blast because it was near a highway. And we thought, what if we fire and the rock blows up? And we were just going to have to take our chances. We made the form by cutting down saplings and bending them and tying them together. And this is basically the size of the kiln. It was small and very important to us. And each time we fired it, the floor broke apart. It started a sinter. So every second or third firing, we would haul out about a bushel of rock. And after 6 years, we had more than doubled the capacity of the kiln just by digging the floor out. And all the time we were learning more and more. So it was a beautiful proportion of having a bigger kiln without having to build a bigger one. Okay. Yep. So this is a banyan tree in Australia. And I like it because I think it symbolizes the interest in wood firing. The branches of the tree put down little trunks which have runners, and they develop into roots. They develop into other trees, freestanding in connection with the mother tree. And I think that in the 1970s, there were a lot of people who came to this country who were apprentices in Japanese potteries. They came over here with their own ideas, and they contributed to this groundswell of information about wood firing that's still continuing today. Okay. In 1983, I went to New Zealand and fired this large anagama on the right. It was built by 40 potters. They asked me to come down and do the first firing with them, and it's very excited to do that. I found that New Zealand was my favorite country, and just this week I found I'm going to go back after 40 years and teach some more workshops there in this coming September. And that kiln was so interesting to me that I came back and tore down a small one and enlarged it even more. Okay, so here are some of the first students. Teaching wood firing with a group of students. None of them were ceramics majors. They were all pre-med students or some other kind of interesting group. We learned a lot, okay? And we got a few pieces out each time. They really challenged our aesthetics. We didn't know if they were good or bad. We didn't know what to think about them. I was aesthetically helpless when I looked at work like this. I like this red color on this pot here. And my immediate stupid thought was, how can I get a pot that's that color all over? Well, you know, it's red because it's gray, and they complement each other. And just because we didn't grow up with pots like that didn't mean that they couldn't be beautiful. So it was a test of the resilience of our aesthetic preferences. And these are my two gurus. This is Charlie Decker, who worked in Tennessee. I never met him, but he was part of an ongoing tradition of hand-making pots. And Bill Daly taught in Philadelphia. And when I got interested in wood firing, I wrote to Bill and I said, Bill, I really like wood firing. I want to go to Japan and really learn about it from people who know how to do it. And he wrote back immediately and he said, don't go to Japan. Whatever you do, don't go. They'll only tell you what they want you to know, and you'll be in a subservient position. You'll go there with your empty knowledge bowl and say, here I am with my empty knowledge bowl. Please put knowledge in it. And he said, that's no way to learn. He said, stay home, fire your kiln, learn as much as you can, and you'll know when to go to Japan if you really want to go. So that's what I did for about 11 years. And then I went to Tokoname. I lived with a Japanese family. I was one of 20 people in the IWCAT program. Okay, go ahead. And I traveled everywhere, getting information about wood firing and just the way people stacked wood. Switzerland, Germany, okay? Yep. Always dealing with wood, okay. Yep. 1987, I built my large kiln. Okay. Now, this is the inside. Friends came. We built a structure over it. Okay. This is a smaller kiln, 2005. This is the Pixigama shed over that. Long story about that shed, but basically some friends sold their farm. They went to live in the Orkney Islands. Frank was an astronomer. He wanted to go someplace where there was lots of night, short days and long nights. And they had some antique pottery that they just gave to me. And I sold it. And with the money, I was able to buy the shed and a log splitter and a chainsaw. Great friends. Yep. Okay, this is the front of the kiln. It has a heavy cantilever door, probably too heavy, but it works. We fire this kiln twice a year. We fire usually in March and in November. Okay. Yep. This is stoking that kiln. Okay. Yeah, pots coming out. I love pitchers. Pitchers and jugs are two of my favorite forms. I also took an interest in firing porcelain in the wood kiln. A lot of the work that I make now is porcelain. This piece has no glaze on the outside. It has a Shino glaze inside, and everything on the outside is the result of the firing. Usually fire for 5 days. Okay. Yep. Same with these. Porcelain on the left, large stoneware bottle on the right, side fired. Okay. Yeah, this is that big piece. I traded that to Scott Parody for one of his sculptures. Okay. This is the same pot. I was invited to Shigaraki in the year 2000, and I had the strangest feeling. I fired an anagama there, and a lot of people came and gathered around when it was unloaded, and nobody said anything. They just stood and looked. And I thought, oh, this must be horrible. And nevertheless, I packed them up. And I swear something happened to this pot on the flight, because when I unwrapped it, I thought it was one of the most beautiful pots I'd ever made. It looked like winter on the left and summer or fall on the right, you know, all from just one piece. I love that unpredictability in what comes out of the kiln. I like taking that kind of risk of not knowing quite what's going to happen and being open to what does. Okay. And so I started working with the porcelains and courting this kind of blue glaze that comes from carbon trapping in the clay itself. So these are all bare pots with a Shino lining. Okay. Well, these are two pots made from the same clay. They're the same size, fired in the same kiln, 1 foot apart. They are each fired down inside other pots. And until you do that, you'll never believe that the atmosphere inside a pot is so different from the atmosphere on the outside. And the one on the right is the only pot I ever saw in a kiln. I thought I was going to faint. And one white handle, one black handle. And the carbon trapping, it's just exquisite. And I have to say that if I had seen that same pot 20 years before, I would have disliked it intensely because I hadn't made all the pots in between that took me to a point of understanding where I realized how wonderful it was. And the one on the left has about a 6 or 7 cone difference in temperature between the top and the bottom. And it's only 11 inches tall. So those kinds of things are outside of our control. And if we're open to discovery, then it rows our boat. Okay? Yep. This is called Screamer. This is a porcelain bowl fired upside down on 3 seashell supports. Yes. This is another one fired on its side. I like seeing how gravity affects the work. So you put this bare pot in there and it comes out with some movement and some drawing that the fire does over time. You can't get this kind of effect from short firings. Nobody ever loved a pot because it was economically fired. I just fire for a long time. I get the wood, Dave and I do all the work. We just work and work to get lots of wood. So we always have wood left over from the firing. Somebody says, how much wood does it take to fire your kiln? And I say, enough so we have some left over. Okay. Yep. I like making cups. I made lots and lots of mugs and various kinds of cups. This winter, the birds ate nearly 40 pounds of suet. I often watch them peck and then convert a phantom steer's insides to flight, to feathered warmth a winter's night could not snuff out. Then I drove to class and showed you how to create shape out of our planet, torquing our planet's flesh lump after lump into cups and bowls by the dozens. We gave them form, color, fire, memory. Can you feel in a teacup's heat that friction of change, the combustion of one thing becoming another? Okay. This is a pot that was fired twice. I used to throw everything away that didn't seem good. Then I got smarter and I realized that some pots have another life, but they need to be refired. Ken Matsuzaki said that when he unloads his kiln, 1/3 of the pots get thrown away, 1/3 get refired, and 1/3 get exhibited. I can understand that. Yeah, I make some of these little sculptural forms. They're on granite bases. They're thrown, paddled, and they relate to each other. That's all I'll say about these. Okay. And these I've always enjoyed making. They're porcelain. They have nothing on them when they go in the kiln. They're fired upside down in a certain zone toward the front, and the fire works on them. And this one on the left is a shade of blue that I really like. Only get maybe 1 or 2 pieces from each firing that have that intense blue color. And it's carbon trapping right in the body. Okay. Yeah, this pot on the left I brought with me. It's down there, this little impromptu gallery we set up. There are a few pieces, recent ones, that are in the next series of slides, and we're kind of getting to the end of the talk here. Okay. Yeah, this is the same piece, top side and the reverse side on the right. These came out of last summer's firing. Okay. Yeah. Same with these two. These are in the last year. Okay. Yep. For about 45 years, I had a home sale. And I found that local people will support your work if you give them a chance. It took me probably 3 years to realize the futility of having a 2-day sale. So I guess for probably at least 35 years, I had a 3-hour sale once a year. And people came. I usually had 300 to 350 pieces. They bought almost all of them the first hour and a half. And we had a couple of checkout lines, had a little horn I blew when it was time. People would say, my watch says 12 o'clock. And then they would go in and buy things. If you can make things for your neighbors or the people in your town, it's so gratifying. It's so different from selling very expensive pots in galleries where all you get is money. You get nothing in the way of person-to-person relationship. And I think these sales that people have where there are a number of studios involved, you go from one to the other, that's really wonderful. It's so gratifying. Okay, another picture of some of the work. Most of this work is gas-fired, which I like to do also. I don't do these sales anymore. I can't make 300 pots for a sale. Okay. And once a year, I get invited to an exhibition in Demarest, New Jersey, at the Old Church Cultural School. And you get a 10-foot space. This was one of my spaces, probably 10 years ago. Haynes knows about that. He's been there. People come. It's been going on for 50 years. People come and they really know how to look at work. It just makes such a difference when you're presenting your work to people who know what they're looking at and can appreciate it. Okay. This is my kill symbol in the winter. Okay. This is my son. He's a painter, Gavin, out in Tucson. He's 56, and he's an avid skateboarder. Okay. Yep. What's this? Oh, that's my grandson in that pot. Okay. This is my partner, Carol Ann Currier. And Carol Ann makes soda glazed work. She does all the social media work. I have no social media consciousness. So she tells me what goes on in that world. So thank you very much. That was my talk. Are there lights here?
Yes. Right under your left is
Oh, yeah. How about? like that. Yeah, good. Yeah, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to talk some more.
Jack, is the carbon trapping all in 1100 degrees, or does it occur throughout the firing? Carbon trapping?
With Shino glazes that have soda ash in them, they start melting at about cone 08. And so as soon as they get glassy, they don't carbon trap anymore. So you need to have a good strong reduction. We reduced out here for about an hour and a half before I thought the glazes were going to glass over. But until you fire pots inside other pots, you're really in for a surprise, because whatever it is, it's magical. The atmosphere inside a pot can be completely different from the atmosphere outside the pot in the same firing.
Did we fire anything inside anything else? Was anything fired inside another pot when you were stacking?
In here, I tried to make that happen, but most of the pieces were glazed inside, and you have to talk to the person and see if they mind having seashells in the bottom to hold the pot up, and I didn't go through that. It was raining and I just felt under a great deal of pressure to get as many things in the kiln. You know, sometimes we talk about stacking a kiln in different subtle ways with big pots here and small pots there. I couldn't do it. It was it was a challenge to try to get as many pieces in as we could, and well, did my best.
Yeah, I have a few cups inside bowls and bowls stacked on top of bowls.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, yeah. Keep trying it.
That's different than saggering a pot, isn't it?
Yes, you can make saggers and do that, or just use pots as saggers. Yeah, all the Chinese pots were fired in saggers. Their tea bowls each had a sagger.
When they were fired, like in ancient days?
Yeah, yeah, in the Song Dynasty. The reason is that they were firing with coal. And coal ash is hideous, and it doesn't melt the way wood ash does. So they had to protect the pots from the coal ash.
I was so surprised to hear what Bill Bailey told you about not going to Japan.
Yeah.
As if there was some sort of risk or danger involved. And how did you take what he told you about that?
Oh, I was shocked. You know, at the time, the big winner was Japan Airlines, because Japanese potters wanted to come to this country because they were sick of tradition. And American potters were missing tradition, and they wanted to go someplace where there was tradition. Right. And they were passing each other at 30,000 feet. And so when I heard that, I was really shocked. But he did say, keep firing your kiln, and you will know when you want to go if you do. And so it was sort of like bait, you know. You could. He didn't say don't ever go to Japan.
I see. He said you've got some work to do before you go to Japan.
Yes, and then part of that was that when you go there, you'll be able to relate as a peer. You'll be able to exchange information, and it will be good for both of you. And that's exactly how it worked out. I thought that was so prescient. Yeah.
So how much time elapsed between the time he told you that and the time that you went?
It was about 11 years.
Oh, Wow.
Yeah, and in the meantime, I met a lot of potters who had come from Japan, who had worked there. Um, I've fired different kilns with people, talked with them, and I felt as though I was building up some credentials, just interior credentials about knowing how to see things, knowing what happened in the kiln. Mm-hmm.
What year was it that you
1992, there was a program in Tokoname called IWCAT, the
You mentioned,
International Workshop in Ceramic Art Tokoname. And I lived with a Japanese family for 5 weeks. And they gave us three important things. Well, four, I guess. They gave us a room, a place to sleep. They gave us breakfast and supper and a bicycle. And we rode our bicycle to this school where 20 of us from 7 different countries worked every day. We could make anything we wanted. We had unlimited clay. We had visits to museums and studios. People came and gave us workshops. I asked a tea bowl maker if young people could make good tea bowls, or if you had to be as old as he was. And he said, you can't make a good tea bowl until you're 50, and you have to start before you're 20. So he had that all figured out.
Do they still have that program?
Pardon?
Do they still have that?
No, unfortunately. The Japanese economy was just going gangbusters in the early 90s. And we paid them $1,000. We didn't pay our host family anything. They were so nice to us, but they wouldn't take any money. And for the $1,000, we got all the clay we could use. They fed us. We all gained weight. We had incredible parties, and they were just so nice to us. And I gained a sense of history in what we do. So much respect. We went to a place where they were excavating 11 anagama kilns that were 1,000 years old. And you could see they were building these kilns before there were bricks. And then the last ones were actually constructed out of the wasters from the first ones. They had lots of tiny little sauce dishes for dipping things in, and they were all glued together. That became a brick. So they built on literally out of the past.
This was all at Tokoname?
Yeah, this was at Tokoname. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and then going to China was another opportunity to get participate in history, get to know what went on. They took us in a cave in a mountain called Gaoling Mountain, where the word kaolin comes from. It's where kaolin was first discovered. And it's not like you go in this hole and there's kaolin. The kaolin is between great big blocks of stone, and somebody was curious enough back in the 17th century to dig out this curious white stuff and take it to potters and show it to them, and it revolutionized ceramics. And have you ever read a book called The Arcanum? It's by Janet Gleason. It's the only book on ceramics I ever read that could be turned into an opera. It's about the discovery of porcelain in Europe. And there were arranged marriages between families for glaze recipes. And, there was so much secret. The history of ceramics is really the history of deathbed secrets. And now with the internet, it's just shockingly profligate. You can find out anything. There really aren't any secrets. It's so healthy.
No more arranged marriages, though.
Oh, yeah, not yet. No, but yeah, it continues to be fascinating. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, those are good questions.
I feel like we don't hear about tokoname so much as other kiln sites. What did you learn from that tradition in particular?
Well, they said there were 100 production potters working in Tokonome. And when you went downtown, it was just tea shop after tea shop after tea shop, making a lot of the same kinds of basically similar work. But there was also toilet factories and big commercial production going on too. And there were a lot of marvelous, great big jars in museums. And there was the remains, actually the whole kiln was still there. I think it might have had 12 chambers. And you could have driven a Volkswagen bus into any one of the chambers. It used to be when they were firing it, one family would have one entire chamber, and it was fired with coal. And they had to bring the coal to Tokoname on boats, and then bring it up the hill to the kiln. It was an enormous amount of work and perseverance. Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. You hear more about Bizan and some of the other places, but they have active programs going on, and there's no other country that has such a long cultivation of ceramic art. They were making pots there 40,000 years ago. The Joman pots, Joman, some of the most phenomenal pots in the world. We think they were made by women. The men were out hunting protein. And so they're some of the most mysterious pots. They had to have been made with a deep spiritual content. And they didn't have a written language, so we can only suppose what they were doing. And they're fired so low, their ceramic technology was so minimal that they're just a little stronger than a Ritz cracker. And yet they've survived. It's absolutely amazing. Great. Well, thanks again for coming. That was fun.